Good afternoon, everybody. Please make sure you're seated comfortably and in a way that we can see each other. You can feel the pull of winter, yes? The chill beginning to exert itself. I, for one, I like that. I find it a relief, and I enjoy very much the turning of the seasons. Hoshi and I were having a conversation a week ago and expressing to each other the concern that as the climate begins to shift and things begin to change, we certainly hope we don't lose all four seasons. You know, there are some places where it's just really hot and it just changes and now it's winter. I really delight in the shifting and the changing of things. Such a profound expression of truth. Whether you believe it or not, winter's time. And I, for one, find that very encouraging. You know? Thank goodness I don't have to have all the correct things on my sheet of beliefs. Right? What a burden. What a challenging way to try to navigate. If you would all critically examine and reflect, put your beliefs through scrutiny. Gosh, I'm so glad that we don't, in our tradition, have to sign off to the unknown in some way that we pretend we know it. Rather, the focus is on direct, immediate, intimate experience of our own lives. Such a simple thing, really. And really it is a simple thing, and yet deeply profound. We've been working for some time now with the Lankavatara Sutra, and I'm going to continue on in that effort today. The sutra and the attainment on self-realization chapter gives us many pointers. I'll bring some of them to our attention. Those earnest disciples and masters who wish to fully understand all aspects of the different stages of bodhisattvahood by the aid of their right knowledge must do so by becoming thoroughly clear that objects of discrimination are only seen to be so by the mind, and thus, by keeping themselves freed from discriminations and clinging to them in false reasonings, which are also of the mind itself, by ever seeking to see things truly, and by planting roots of goodness in Buddha lands that know no limits made by differentiations. So this is kind of the setup. That's the hors d'oeuvre. That's getting us in the room, right? Clearly, this sutra is talking about the mind. Mind only mind. What does this mean? Is this, I think, therefore I am, and I don't mind? Or what does it mean, you know? So, to do this, let's move in a little deeper. The bodhisattva should keep themselves away from turmoil. No? Isn't turmoil just a 21st century mistake? Didn't everyone eat organically in the pure, clean snow back in the day? Well, turmoil, right? They should keep themselves away from turmoil, from social excitements and sleepiness. I see. The sleepiness followed me. The turmoil isn't my fault. Social excitements, I think this is kind of exciting. Oh, also keep away from the treatise and writings of the worldly philosophers, and away from the ritual and ceremonies of the Brahmins. Some please do nots, a little list, right? Now, why is this? After all, life is turmoil, is it not? I mean, the act of being born, pretty serious business, right? And from that instant, actually from before that, the business of dying is already happening. How would you ever escape from turmoil, really? But just take it kind of on its face. The sutra is saying that in order to do this work, which we'll get into more, it's necessary to know how to step off the crazy train for at least a little bit. We need to know how to actually stand aside from the constant stream of churn and turmoil. As I've said many, many times, that I've been very fortunate to be practicing since I was in my teenage years. And now in my mid-50s, I can confidently say that at every stage along the life as I've known it, there's always really good reasons to not come to retreat. And they're always very solid feeling, and they often are, frankly. There's always a chunk of the turmoil and churn that has its hooks in you and would beckon you to keep feeding the game. It takes a certain kind of fortitude, actually, to over time have the heroic clarity that says, you know, the turmoil is just going to keep right on turmoiling whether I'm there or not, and it's okay for me to take a little bit of time and just unplug from all that stuff and do something differently, you see. Many times people come into training and they have this, I think, modern disease of the mind that says, oh, I shall come into the temple, I shall learn some Dharma, and I'll take it and bring it into my life. And I'll improve my life because I've taken this Dharma practice and I'm better for it now. And on the face of it, perhaps so, but please don't be so narrow-minded in your view. Understand what it is to completely let go of the world. Only when you completely let go of the world can you actually hold it well. And the world needs to be held well. The world does not need any of us to be clenching and clinging and white-knuckling it. After all, where does the turmoil come from? Knowing how to put down the turmoil, the social excitements, the dramas. Now, interestingly enough, you come into session and we go to great lengths to simplify things, right? Sit here, walk there, meals here. There's the bunk, there's the bathroom, keep it simple. And yet, it takes some time to be able to actually have our body and our mind harmonize with the Zendo. It's quite possible, maybe even one or two here have had some turmoil. Maybe not, but perhaps. Where did that turmoil come from? And I mean in the deepest sense, where did the turmoil come from? Where does the problem actually come from? Is it just the external face that presents? Or is there some deeper mechanism at play here? So taking time away, knowing how to take time away. I mean, really, if you're taking a break by putting on some crazy first-person shooter video game and shooting a bunch of zombies until 4 a.m. in the morning, is that really a break? Well, it's different, maybe. But that's not taking a break from the turmoil of mind. Keep away from the treatise and the writings and the philosophical speculations. Not forever. In fact, I quite enjoy the turmoil of the world. It's quite pleasurable at times. I like getting in there with what sleeves I have rolled up. But it's only because I know how to unplug from the whole thing that I can pick it up and not get scarred. Same thing with philosophy. It's good stuff if you understand how to put it in perspective. It even says, be careful about too much liturgy and ritual and ceremony. That too can become a place to hide from the truth. Many of those who still would claim to be religiously affiliated of one side or the next are basically just hiding in liturgy and ritual. Show up, do the thing, leave. I'm safe now somehow. I wonder about that. The sutra goes on to be warning us about those who are professional ritual purveyors. You might say, well, in our modern day and age, that's clearly not a problem. I don't think so. Look closely. Maybe even political rallies, big sports events, all kinds of stuff. The sutra is saying, be careful of herd movement, group herd movement. We're group creatures. There's nothing wrong with it, but don't be carried away by it. Understand how to see past. So, let the practitioner retire to a secluded place and there devote themselves to the practice of the various spiritual disciplines. Because it is only by so doing that they will become capable of attaining in this world of multiplicities a true insight into the workings of universal mind and its essence. Let the practitioner retire to a secluded place. And there devote themselves to the practice of the various spiritual disciplines. Now, this is an interesting point, I think, to the chorus here gathered, no preaching need come from me, about the value of coming together in solitude and in community. But this business of devoting themselves to the various spiritual practices, I'd like to linger a moment on this, because some places of training give one either the direct teaching or the tangential impression that there's only one way to do this. There's only one practice, and it is blank. Even in Zen, all you need to do is just sit there. I'm not so sure about that. There are many different spiritual practices within Zazen. I mean, pick a row here, there, anywhere. And although everyone in retreat may more or less adopt something like the same form, perhaps at a glance seem to be all kind of on the same page, you should understand that there are many different practices that are within the scope of Zen training. And it's it's simply the fact, actually, that there's a reasoned, clear order to the progression of these practices. It really is not random. And it's also very common that as one's spiritual development unfolds, things that we thought were clear become a little more distant to us, and we have to revisit and reconnect with them, or issues that we thought we didn't have suddenly flare and need to be addressed. This is not a contraindicator of one's capacity for the path. In fact, the exact opposite. It's showing you that you're on the path. So there have been definitely times when the practice will shift. What arises in the moment of Doksan, in the heart of Sesshin, is exactly what needs to arise. And if we as practitioners see the exchange in this way, it can do its work. If you see it as some kind of strange spiritual boxing ring that you're competing with, or if you see it as some kind of a contest to prove something, a place to validate your escapades of the spiritual planes or whatever, you have to really, I suggest that all those views are really impediments to the truth. Even if they're happening, that's not what's happening. Simply come and bare your heart. Show your mind. Be earnest. That's like 80% of the deal. Understanding how to be earnest is not a given. Many of us have been functioning and served fairly well by various coping mechanisms, various masks and strategies of the world, and it takes a while to trust that you really don't need them here. And in fact, not only do you not need them, they're getting in your way. The very mechanism that might serve you fairly well out in the world will fail you miserably here. You basically have two choices. You can see it, acknowledge it, let it go, and stand vulnerable and naked in the moment, not knowing what's going to happen, and enjoy that. Or you can freak out and clench the wheel tighter and keep trying to make it where you think it should go. The first step really is to recognize when you're white-knuckling the wheel. If you're so used to this, you don't even notice it happening, right? It's when you go, wait a minute, I'm clenched here. I mean, that moment of recognizing the clench is a huge thing. Once you can recognize this as an option, then you can choose. You can notice what your body is doing, what your mind is doing, what your heart is really having to say here. If you tense up, you can't feel anything. All you feel is the tension, and it doesn't make you safe. It does not make you safe. I want to validate the fact that, again, out in the world, these ways we have of dealing, they came to you for good reasons and maybe served you quite well. And yet, dear one, at this juncture, they will not help you anymore. I'm actually not keeping score. There's no game board. There's no winner or loser. There's no competition going on. It's just you and your life, baby. It's just you and your life. The question is, how do we contact that life, really? It's a very strange sensation to wake up in a somewhat adult body and go, who the hell am I? What is going on here? Is this really what it's about? Did I miss something somewhere? Was there some really important memo that no one sent me, or what? And what's strange is you may have markers of great success or failure, and they somehow don't seem to really matter from this perspective. It's not just about getting all the things to be the way you'd like the things to be. There's something else that's the central matter here. So these various spiritual disciplines, they come at us, gosh, you know, it's hard to even say one at a time because that's not really the case, but they come to our awareness at different times. For example, what am I talking about? Well, you may be a person for whom, let us say, the kinhin periods seem just infuriatingly long, pointless, kind of repulsive, wearisome. You have a distaste for it. Why can't we just sit and do the real thing? Something like that. If you feel that way, I encourage you to notice your feeling, acknowledge it, let it go, and just practice kinhin. Because there will come probably another moment where kinhin is your favorite practice. You loves you a good kinhin. And for real reasons, like you actually, oh, I see what's going on here. It's kind of interesting. Same thing with the oryoki or the chanting, liturgy. I mean, you know, some people love it, some people hate it. I don't really care. I really don't. Just do it. Just pay attention. Relentlessly pay attention to what's happening and trust the process. In time, perhaps sooner than you think, that inscrutable line that always kind of makes your brain fog when it gets recited suddenly comes up and smacks you upside the head with some amazing guidance that you desperately need. But it only comes to you if you make friends with it. There's a certain fidelity, a certain choice. After the shopping is done, after you've made some decisions about what path you're going to investigate deeply, one has to actually let go of your opinions and just engage. One needs to be careful about this. You have to really vet the place first, vet the teacher first, make sure everything lines up. But eventually you have to say, okay, let's do it. And when you do, embrace all of it. And don't be surprised if you come into Doksan sometime and you think it's going to go this way and it doesn't go that way. Don't be surprised if your practice gets adjusted in a way you didn't see coming. Yeah, no kidding. That's why we need teachers, because we can't see what needs to come until you can. So there are various spiritual disciplines, because it is only by doing so that we become capable of attaining in this world, not some other fantasy experience somewhere else, some other dimension or plane or something, but in this world, as we commonly know it, is it possible with all of the multiplicities and all the plurality of form and all the turmoil that's inevitably the result of that. The plants competing for sunlight and the animals contesting for the plants and the predators contesting for the animals and so on. you contesting for market share. It's only then that a true clarity into the workings of universal mind and its essence can be attained. Universal mind. That sounds cool. What's universal mind? Well, if we've been following the sutra for a while, you have heard universal mind is Buddha nature. Universal mind is suchness, thusness, tathagata garbha, Buddha nature. One of the things I really love about our tradition is it uses terms, but it's not impinged by them. There are some people, for various karmic causes and conditions, that certain words really help and others do not. And so the Buddha regularly changes it up. So insight into the workings of universal mind and its essence. Now, once backed away from the turmoil and trying not to bring any in with you. You know, you leave your shoes outside the door, try to leave your turmoil outside the door too. If you can, it makes a mess everywhere. Someone else has to come and clean up behind you. But here, then, surrounded by good friends. Surrounded by good friends. Surrounded by good friends, surrounded by the Buddhas, earnest disciples will become capable. You see, this is the interesting thing. Some people come into training with their eyes on what they think to be the prize, not realizing they are not capable of realizing said prize at this time. You must make yourself capable. Your causes and conditions may be beautifully right, but if you've not attained the capability to practice, then this is your job. This is what has to be done. You must become capable. It's a capacity. And you have to attain this capacity by basically letting go of all the obstructions. But strangely, it's not a new skill that you add, rather the impediments are let go of. The blocks are seen as blocks, the unhelpful is seen as unhelpful. The foolish spinning of the wheel is noticed as that and not confused with the Dharma wheel. And thus, in this place of solitude, in this deep community of good friends, which is Sangha, you become capable. May I become capable of realizing myself in the universe as not separate. Do you understand? Bless me to accomplish this. There's a kind of humility that's necessary. If we come at the Dharma in any kind of arrogant way, it will not work. In this business of good friends, I am concerned about social interaction in the modern era, in the modern age. The artificial intelligence, somehow I get these very strange to me ads on my phone. I'm relentlessly offered to buy a girlfriend. An AI bot that is clearly has an agenda. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? But then I think, well, young people perhaps interrelate mostly through this phone thing. Hardly a phone anymore. How do you know? the difference between an actual relationship and an algorithm that is analyzing everything you say and spitting back what you've told it you like. This is not a good friend. I think one advantage is that as things become more and more false and more artificial, real human intelligence will become more and more obviously valuable. I think the pendulum will go the other way. And I think more and more of us will actually realize, you know, I need friends, and I need connection, and I need love, and I need belonging. And it's not coming from these algorithms and these digital things. A group of people who share an interest is not a community. Just because you're perhaps online with some affinity thing and you're liking stuff that other people like, those people don't know you. They don't care about you. In fact, there's probably an algorithm manipulating the whole thing. Rather, actual community is about caring for each other's welfare in real and meaningful ways. And this is integral into the spiritual practices that the sutra is pointing us to. Why does the sutra say there are various spiritual disciplines that need to be encountered, freed from the turmoil and the turbulence, and they're surrounded by good friends? You can become capable. Because it's true. And it's actually not just a figment of the 21st century technology world. I think it's ever been so. It's one of the reasons why our sessions are not open to any random person who wants to come. You have to get connected. You have to become connected somehow. We've got to get to know each other to some degree. We've got to forge some connectivity, not just between you and the teacher, but you and the community itself. Because really the entire community is the Dharma, is the Buddha, is the Sangha, is the teaching and the teacher. You come to see that whoever's sitting on something like this high seat is just another expression of the same thing everyone's expressing. But this connection needs to happen for practice to be real. Because let's face it, this can get really challenging. You think to leave the turmoil aside so you can come and just be in peace all day? No. Actually, what happens is you let go of the lesser turmoil to confront the greater turmoil. That's actually what goes on. The real turmoil, the true calamity, not the false little ones that keep you distracted and busy. The actual calamity of your soul. Because if you haven't noticed the calamity yet, you're just not paying attention, man. And I want you to. It's kind of funny, isn't it? Set aside the turmoil, sounds nice. Come in amongst good friends, well, that sounds like a warm, cozy bath and a blankie. A milk and cookie, you know? And what do? We work at the spiritual disciplines. Lovely, lovely. But actually, it's sitting in the corner weeping. Tears streaming down. It's so beautiful. Oh, yeah. So that's why it's Buddhist business and it's family business. And you must have the concern of your fellows' welfare at heart. This is absolutely essential. And the way that expresses sometimes is leave them alone to sweat their own blood. It's exactly what they need to do. Do not dare interrupt that. If you love them and value them and honor them, with their own integrity and nobility and dignity. Allow them their experience, please. Does it make sense? We all know what's happening here. No one idly flops around and lands in the Zendo. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. If you're here, you're here. And you're here to confront the real, actual turmoil. So you have to let go of the petty ones so that you can feel it. And you want to feel it. You need to. It is only by doing this that earnest disciples become capable of attaining in this world of multiplicity true clarity into the workings of Buddha nature and its essence. There, surrounded by good friends and Buddhas, earnest disciples become capable of understanding the significance of the mind system and its place as a mediating agent between the external world and universal mind. External world. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Okay. Internal world, I would add. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions. Universal mind. Buddha nature. True reality. I want this, I want this beautiful Buddha enlightenment, whatever that stuff is. That sounds good, sign me up. And yet all I have is this body and these feelings and these perceptions, you know. When do I get the good stuff? Ah, I see. So understanding the mind system, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, brain, storehouse consciousness, ego consciousness, understanding that whole mind system actually is, the sutra says, an intermediary between Buddha nature and your experience. A temporary way of describing it, by the way, but a useful one. They become capable of crossing the ocean of birth and death, which arises from ignorance, desire, greed, anger, and ignorance. Having done this, they establish themselves in a measure of self-realization that goes with that attainment, all of which may be gained by right knowledge, and the way will be clear for the bodhisattva's further advance along the stages. So the sutra here is pointing to something that's very important to have some grasp on. I really encourage you not to obsess over this. Don't try to have a map all set out in your mind in advance. But the fact is, there are stages of growth. There really are. It's really true. And places and teachers and approaches that say if all you ever hear is that there's nothing to attain, nothing to realize, it's all perfect as it is, off you go, Johnny, you're all good. Frankly, you have to earn that. That's actually completely true. But it's not true for you until you earn it. You have to do the work of realizing the truth of that. And there are stages of that growth and development that show, that are true, that matter. And one of them is that you can come to spaces where you have a measure of realization. You have some entrance into this ground of being. You have some connectivity with this beingness itself, and yet kind of comes and goes. Starts and fits, mostly fits, a few starts, right? Here and there, there and here. Where to go? I got it, I don't got it. That's very natural, very normal. And also the sutra here is pointing to right knowledge, meaning a kind of intellectual understanding that's helpful. But watch what the sutra does next. The disciple should then abandon this understanding, which they've gained by right knowledge. What? Abandon right knowledge, says the sutra, at a certain stage. Prior to that stage, you need to get you some right knowledge, or else you'll never get to that stage. But once you get to that stage where you're starting to taste and touch and feel this, then you're getting into that liminal transitional space where mundane right knowledge will fail you, even if it's correct. Maybe particularly if it's correct. It's no longer useful. The disciple should then abandon the understanding of mind which they have gained by right knowledge, which in comparison with noble wisdom is like a lame donkey. And entering on the 8th stage of bodhisattvahood, they should discipline themselves in the noble wisdom itself. So you could say that the Eightfold Path, the very first is right view, right understanding. You go through all this stuff and you come right back to right view. But this time that right view is not the same as the beginning right view. The first right view is kind of like an intellectually clear enough cognitive framework to get you going. And it gets you some distance, and you need it. But eventually, you have to be willing to let go of the lesser right knowledge to really attain the greater right knowledge. Prajna wisdom itself will not be contained by your intellect. You are utterly incapable of thinking it through clearly enough. It's simply beyond intellect's domain. And intellect is great. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just limited. I can't play my guitar with my ear. Different functions. So this business of directly attaining experience in prajna wisdom, this shifts from being occasional entrance, starts and fits of touching something, and it becomes stabilized. And one of the things that you have to fast from, one of the things you have to renounce to get to that level of intimacy is you have to renounce what may have served you well but no longer does. And that includes your Buddhist thinking. All your discourses on what Dogen really meant, or corrections about the language or whatever else. The descriptions, however correct they may be, they're not intimate enough. Now then, ironically, another thing happens. Once you've seen into the intimacy of this realization, you're completely free to use those same descriptions again. And they're very powerful, and it's fine. Do you see how it is? That's why this is a little bit confusing, perhaps. But really, it comes down to something very, very simple. Gather away from the mundane tumults to confront the real one. Gather with good spiritual friends, those who've walked the way, who have experience. Take care of yourself and those around, and do the work. Do the work as it comes to you. Whatever practice is showing up, embrace it wholeheartedly. Do not keep track. Do not take score. Do not compete, not even with yourself. Let all thoughts of any competition go and simply throw yourself into exactly what is in front of you. Become capable of direct realization. and then realize it. First it starts and fits, and then it becomes stable. It does. I remember in my first decade or so of training that the mental state that I would be able to get into at Sesshin was so different from daily life in the city. It was just this vast gap between my experience on day 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of Sesshin and a random day in the city. But as training developed and maturity began to sink in, that gap closed and closed and closed and closed until it's really just daily life and ordinary mind. And yet that daily life and ordinary mind is a complete expression of the total truth. And it's recognized as such. It's appreciated as such. And then, those small turmoils, they're still there. And people are still aching and hurting and suffering. And you, dear one, can do something about it. You're actually strong enough swimmer to jump into that whirlpool and grab somebody and help them out. You can do it. And you don't have to explain Mu to them over coffee to do it. Simply be there. Be that good friend. Be that family member, that work acquaintance, that stranger on the subway. Knowing all the while that you're manifesting Anyuttara Samyak Sambodhi, expressing the complete totality of the universe now as you. And also, it's that subway. It's that rusty beer can in the park that doesn't belong there. It's the sound of that newborn. It's the sight of that old person struggling with their walker. Finally, there are 3 aspects. Noble wisdom. Imagelessness. The power added by Buddhas. And the perfection of self-realization stabilized. Imagelessness comes forth when all things belonging to discipleship, mastership, philosophy are thoroughly mastered and let go. Charlie Parker famously said, learn your scales, your arpeggios, and then forget all that stuff and just play. First things first. But then let it go. Second, the power added by all the Buddhas by reason of their original vows, including the identification of their lives and the sharing of merit with all sentient lives. There's more packed in here than might be apparent at first blush, and I'm running a little over. But identification of your life with all sentient life. And let's throw in insentient as well while we're at it. But really seeing that yourself and all those other selves are not separate. Really, there is no wave on any of the Earth's oceans that is not connected to every other wave. This is profoundly true. And because all the Buddhas throughout space and time have realized that same fact and identified themselves as the universe itself, they've identified themselves as you. You can rely on that. It is perceived and subtly answered. This tariki, this other power, starts to come online, starts to function. And thirdly, the perfect self-realization that has thus far only been realized in measures becomes stabilized. So, may we identify our lives with all lives, and may we realize the true, full, perfect, and complete Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi that is our birthright. For the sake of ourselves and all beings throughout space and time, may it be so.